next speaker. My name is Trine Korsby. I'm a PhD fellow at the University of Copenhagen in Denmark. I don't have a PowerPoint presentation, so we have to live without that. Amelia is a 17-year-old Romanian girl. When I meet her for the first time, she's living at a shelter for victims of trafficking, located on a secret address in Italy. She's been living at the shelter for a year after running away from her traffickers. She lives at the shelter with 9 other young women who have also been trafficked to Italy. Recently, Amelia has found a job as an assistant at a hairdressing salon in the center of Rome. The job was not really what she dreamed of, but her colleagues are nice, so she has decided to give the job a chance. Having decided to press charges against her traffickers, Amelia is a crown witness in a big court case against 2 brothers who had trafficked several Romanian girls to Rome and southern Italy and forced them into prostitution, including Amelia and her cousin Lavinia. This paper is based on 9 months of fieldwork with young women who've been trafficked to Italy. But the paper also serves as a starting point for my upcoming PhD fieldwork, which will be carried out both here in Romania and in Italy, starting next week actually, and going on for the following 10 months. The PhD project explores the lived life of Romanians trafficked to Italy, and the social, emotional, and bodily consequences of trafficking in the long run. I have stayed in contact with the young women from my previous fieldwork for the last couple of years. So amongst other approaches, I will follow up on them in my upcoming fieldwork, getting an insight into how their lives have developed since they were labeled victims of trafficking approximately 4 years ago. Some of them still live in Italy today, while others have returned to their home country, Romania. 2 of these young women, they ran away from the shelter where I did my fieldwork. They actually ran away and contacted their old traffickers, and they went with them back to Romania in order to transport new girls to Italy. And in this way, these 2 girls, they became traffickers themselves. I hope that my contact to these 2 girls, which is a contact which is really hard to maintain and establish, that it will enable me to explore the move between some otherwise very opposed categories of victim and trafficker. So my PhD is also about the traffickers and their stories. For the young women trafficked to Italy, their relations to 2 of the significant groups of people in their life seem to be characterized by some kind of ambivalence. Ambivalence in their relations to family and friends in their home country, and ambivalence towards their traffickers. The ambivalence at stake, of course, takes 2 different forms, and this is what I would like to shed light on in this paper. I wish to explore how concepts like ambivalence, detachment, and distance might open up to new understandings of their ways of relating. It is late in the afternoon, and I'm waiting for Amelia in the living room of the shelter. She's going to the nearby internet cafe to talk to her mother, which she does every Monday. And today she has invited me to come along. Amelia has not seen her mother for more than a year now, all the time that she has been in Italy. But she has remained in contact with her all through her stay. Amelia walks down the steps. She's dressed up, and she's wearing a red festive dress with ruffles, beautiful silver jewelry, and makeup. We call out our goodbyes to the others, and we walk down to the end of the quiet street where we take the bus to the internet cafe. Amelia is excited, and we chat and laugh on the bus. At the internet cafe, we make ourselves comfortable, and shortly thereafter, her mother's face appears on the screen. She looks just like Amelia. They chat, and the mother shows Amelia her new glasses and the necklace she's wearing, which has been bought with the money that Amelia sent to her for her birthday. The mother is enthusiastic, energetic, and happy. She goes to get Amelia's favorite cat, and Amelia smiles and pets the cat through the screen. Her mother is sitting in the bedroom of her parents' house, Amelia explains to me, and I can see a light blue wall with a religious painting behind the mother. They chat in Romanian, and Amelia translates to me in Italian along the way. At some point, Amelia's smile suddenly fades away, and she looks worried and answers her mother with very short sentences. I ask Amelia what's going on, and she briefly says that her mother is talking about Amelia's father. They might have to cut off the conversation soon, because he's on his way home. I know that Amelia has a very complicated relationship with her father, who is an alcoholic and often becomes abusive and violent with her and her mother, one of the reasons why Amelia left her childhood home. The mother asks Amelia what clothes she's wearing, and Amelia gets up and spins around so her mother can see her dress. The mother looks proud and happy and writes a quick chat note to her daughter. "You are a princess," she writes. Suddenly more chat messages pop up on the screen, and one of them is from one of Amelia's earlier schoolmates, Alexandra, and Amelia is happy to hear from her. Alexandra sends some photos from their recent graduation party, and all of a sudden Amelia's eyes flood with tears. She quickly turns off the camera and of the computer so that her mother cannot see her any longer, and she begins to cry. "It is too late to cry now," she says, as if to stop herself, and she explains to me who is who in the photo. But her voice cracks and she says, "I must invent a time machine so I can go back. I have to do that." She stares at the festively clad girls smiling back at her from the photo and mumbles, "It could have been me in those clothes." She points to the picture and explains in a timid voice, "There is a gate at my school, which is only for the students who graduate. I always looked at that gate and thought that someday it would be me who walked through it. But then all this happened in my life. They just have no idea, none of them." I ask her if she ever feels like going back to Romania, and she shakes her head with all her brown curls jumping around her face. No, that is impossible now, impossible, not after this. I have to make my own life now. The chat messages from her mother start popping up on the screen again, asking if Amelia is still there, and Amelia quickly wipes away her tears, takes a deep breath, and asks me for a mirror so she can check her makeup. "Can you tell on my eyes that I cried?" she asks me, and I assure her that her eyes look fine and not red at all. With that answer, she turns back on the camera, of the computer, putting on a big smile for her mother. On our way back on the bus, Amelia sits quietly next to me, looking out the window. I ask how these weekly talks with her mother normally work out, and after what I experience as a very long silence, Amelia says, "Every Monday I see her on the internet. We speak for a few hours, but I really prefer to pretend that I'm happy. Then I don't have to think about the bad things. Because my mother is the kind of person who, if I said something bad to her, she would get nervous, and I don't like that. I want her to be calm and happy with regards to me. She doesn't know what I've been through, because otherwise she would be really, really worried." In this paper, I want to shed light on the ways of relating between young Romanians like Amelia, who live in Italy after having run away from their traffickers, and their social relations in their home country. I'm interested in the paradox inherent in this relation. The paradox being that those social relations from the home country are very present and very important in the young women's lives. And my argument will be that this presence is made possible through absence. Let me start to explain what I mean by absence. Of course, there is the apparent physical absence in being geographically separated in two different countries. But besides this absence, I'm interested in temporal and emotional absence. Temporal absence is located in a non-sharing of important and also not so important events, and the everyday life passing by. The absentee can be informed about the event and can share others' representations thereof, but without actual physical attendance and shared experience of that event. It thus has to do with a non-sharing of the passing of time, a non-attendance in taking part in accumulating everyday life experiences as they pass by. The emotional absence can occur out of an exclusion of the emotional state and the experiences of another person, For instance, that person's sharing of positive and negative experiences and events. My argument is that these kinds of absence are at play in the ways of relating between the young women and their family members and friends in the home country. But instead of jeopardizing the situation, these kinds of absence actually make the relation work. You could say that the absence makes the presence possible. Amelia's mother is absent in her life in several ways. She's physically far away, she doesn't share the everyday life and the passing of time with her daughter, and she has not seen her for more than a year. And, as we could hear before from my field notes, Amelia doesn't include her mother in her emotional state, and also in the events that have happened to her. She, just like the other young Romanian women that I work with, doesn't tell her mother about her trafficking experiences, how she actually came to Italy, and how she ended up selling sex in the streets of Rome for several months. This also means that she doesn't tell her mother that she lives at the shelter in Rome and why she lives there. She does not share these life-changing events with her mother. And in this way, Amelia holds her mother at an arm's length. She keeps a distance. By being present, I refer to her mother as being important in Amelia's everyday life. She's present because Amelia engages in and refers to her mother on an everyday basis. So, despite this absence on several levels, Amelia's mother is an important social relation in Amelia's life. One could note that it's normal for many people to have a strong bond to one's family members, despite this physical distance. But in this context, it should be noted that Amelia and also my other informants, they come from what could be termed as dysfunctional family backgrounds, and several of them have suffered severe abuse within their families in their childhood. The abuse was both physical and psychological, and several of the families were marked by alcoholism and also ludomania. Many of them lived in poverty, which often led to crime, also sometimes for the part of the young women at a very early age. According to these young women, this family situation was a strong driving force in their decision to leave Romania in hope for a better future. Despite such a difficult family background and her mother's silent accept of Amelia's father's violence against Amelia, Amelia still holds on to and does what she can to maintain the relation to her mother, just as my other informants who hold on to relations to a sister, a cousin, or a grandmother. To include her mother, with whom she seemed to be growing an increasingly closer bond in her life experiences. Experiences which still greatly influence her life today, for instance during court proceedings against her traffickers. Amelia rejected this option very firmly to me. The manifestation and preservation of distance thus appears as a premise for the ways of relating between Amelia and her mother, even though the mother would for a period of time be physically present in Amelia's life. This way of social relating thus demands detachment. It seems as if this kind of relation cannot be present without being absent. The reasons for the choice of exclusion are multiple, and according to Amelia and the other young women that I work with, they feel ashamed of their trafficking and prostitution experiences, and they are afraid of the consequences, such as anger and stigmatization, if they include their family members in these experiences. Again and again, the women underlined that the most important people in their life were the people who were absent in their lives, a cousin, a grandmother, a childhood friend. They underlined the importance of these people with their words and also through their creativity in reaching out to these absent social relations, who quite often wouldn't reciprocate their attempts of contact. This was a source of great sorrow and disappointment for the women. And this is yet another level of absence. But even though the relations were hurtful, uncertain and disappointing, the young women maintained the contact. They continued to contact their family members hoping for a response. Often the family members or friends, all this concrete anti-reciprocal behavior, were at the center of attention of the young Romanians. A good, bad, or non-existent phone call could make or break their day, their week, or their month. Many times I have wondered whether the family members and friends of these young women suspect what happened when the women left for Italy. Does Emilia's mother suspect that her daughter was trafficked to Italy and ended up working in prostitution in the streets of Rome? Does her mother maybe share and maintain this more acceptable version of the story together with Emilia in order to avoid challenging their present relationship? Maybe the preservation of absence is a mutual project in their ways of relating. Having worked so far mostly with the perspectives of the young trafficked women, these questions related to the perspectives of the relatives and friends of the women are questions which I wish to explore further in my upcoming fieldwork. Another kind of social relation that has turned out to be very present and significant for the young women, and which holds a different kind of ambivalence than the absent family members in the home country, is the relation to their traffickers, which I will turn to now. When people discuss human trafficking, there is often a clear vision of something and someone being the good and the bad. They are the evil traffickers on one side and the innocent, helpless victims on the other side. But these categories need to be challenged and investigated. This relationship between the people who are framed by the opposing categories of victim and trafficker is thus a topic that I will explore further in my upcoming fieldwork. In the cases of my informants, the traffickers are people that they trust and know from their home region. In some cases, the trafficker is an acquaintance of the family, a friend, or a new boyfriend. In Emilia's case, she meets her trafficker, Victor, in her hometown, Galati, a few days after she has been thrown out of her childhood home and told by her father not to come back. She already knows Victor through friends in town. She likes him, and he promises her work in Italy, an option which seems compelling now that she has no place to live and therefore has left school. Emilia persuades her cousin Lavinia to go with her, and Victor takes care of all the documents and arrangements. The three of them leave the country by car, and Emilia and Lavinia are excited. They have decided not to tell their parents that they are leaving, so only after crossing the border, they call and tell them that they are on their way to Italy. On the way, Victor says that they have to give him half of their earnings in Italy. He has a lot of expenses in connection with the journey. To Emilia, it seems fair enough, and Victor seems responsible and trustworthy. But upon arrival in Italy, Emilia and Lavinia are locked up in an apartment in a suburb of Rome. The two girls are raped and beaten up, and told that they, as a start, owe Victor €2,000 for the journey. The two girls are completely shocked, and they start working in the streets, but without getting half of their earnings as promised. As Emilia's story shows, Victor was a guy she trusted. She knew him from her local environment, and his proposition to help her to go to Italy seemed like a welcoming option. Talking to the young women, they would often explain to me how this trust in the person who trafficked them to Italy would last in some way, also after realizing that this person might have had other plans with their journey than they had thought. As Emilia said, Victor and the other traffickers were also the ones who knew how things worked in Italy, so they would help her with where to go to the doctor and how to avoid the police. And after all, she could not turn her eye to the fact that they had actually helped her realize her dream of leaving Romania, even though things had not turned out as promised or expected. At the same time, Emilia was also very afraid of Victor and the others, and she continues to be afraid in her life today, because they had threatened her to hurt her family if she ran away. These contrasting notions of fear and trust, the longing for a better life that ends up in exploitation, and also feelings of detachment at the same time as dependency. They are some of the issues at stake in the relations between the traffickers and the young women, and I hope to unfold this further in my upcoming fieldwork. In closing, I would like to mention that in Amelia's life today, you could say that there's no actual relation between her and her traffickers. She does not live at the shelter anymore, and the trial against her traffickers is over. But I will argue that the traffickers are still very present in her life, in that they still affect her actions and possibilities. For instance, through the mere fact that Amelia does not want to enter specific areas of Rome, which she connects with her traffickers. The relations to the traffickers thus in very concrete ways shape the women's lives in terms of security and agency, also after trafficking is over. These relations thus take up a lot of space in the young women's lives, even though the traffickers are someone whom the women actually want to forget, get rid of, and whom they need protection from. Despite the absence and detachment, the traffickers continue to be very present to Amelia and to the other young women. Thank you very much.